We're live and we are back. Meije, how are you doing?
I am doing great. Thanks for the invite again. It's been a little while.
Yeah,
So great to catch up again on the Hivemapper land.
it has been a while, and I think quite a lot has sort of happened since we last spoke. If anyone's missed us, sorry that we haven't been around. And yeah, as I said, a lot has been going on since we last spoke. I think just to premise this episode, what people can kind of expect, Meije and I, as many of you will know, we're fleet owners. We own relatively large fleets of Hivemapper dashcams and then other deep in hardware. So we kind of have a bit of a unique perspective on both community sentiment, and I guess we feel the pluses and the minuses of these projects a bit more than other people as well. So we can speak about, what's been happening in Hivemapper and where we think it's headed.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, excited to kind of talk about this topic again, to kind of see the perspectives, because a lot of the things that happen, right, with Hivemapper, especially the MIPs and etc. As a fleet owner, you can quite quickly see kind of common trends into sentiment and issues, right? So if there's anything that kind of affects the mapping process, it's much more pronounced with fleets than kind of if you have your own dashcam, right? Because if they're, for example, if they tighten the GPS kind of quality, right, so that only if you have a great lock that you're actually starting to actually record.
Yeah.
That's the thing that some people don't notice at all, right? Because they have a unit which doesn't have any GPS issues, or for some reason they kind of don't see it. But as fleet managers, right, as soon as they do something with the GPS, everyone is then going to say, hey, I mean, why am I not recording this many images, etc.
And then you feel it a lot from the support needs as well, right? Because instead of getting one person pinging you every day or two, you get 100 people pinging you every single day. Like, what's going on? What do I do? Every issue is different. And again, like we don't want to focus too much on negatives and stuff, but I think it is worth saying that community sentiment at the moment, I don't think it's a secret. It is a bit low because there are things to complain about. So to recap real quickly, right, there has been MIPs that have come out, which means that people are earning less in honey terms. There's been an increased number of cameras online, so that's fewer tokens. It's natural. It happens with all deep in projects. The price of the token has also gone down as well. It's no secret. So in dollar terms or fiat terms, everyone's earning less, which makes people naturally quite upset. Before we go into it, I think there is also one positive, which is awesome to see, which is revenues have been going up. If you look at the Pine Analytics dashboards or the burn address, the dollar terms and honey terms, honey burned, which is a sign of how much revenue is coming into the project, is going up. And I think that that is a massive step in the right direction, because to be honest, that's the only metric, or one of the only metrics I really care about. It's the most important one.
100%. And I think that the burns increasing, and soon hopefully as well kind of the buying orders from the open market, right, being too many of those, but it's kind of pushing the system towards balance, right? So that's happening, or that's what we want to see in these projects. And the kind of Ariel always talks about is kind of token emissions. If you only have token emissions, right, then you're shifting the balance completely to one side, and you need to rebalance it so that in the end it's a sustainable ecosystem. And that's the thing that is challenging. I mean, we've seen it from the helium land as well. Is that something that takes time? And the more mappers kind of come in, the more urgent it becomes, in a sense, to reach that balance, right? Because you have many more mappers, so kind of the although the average or kind of the global emission increases, kind of the average goes down. So it becomes more and more urgent to kind of rebalance it. So it's great news that we're seeing more of these token burns, and I hope that it continues, because right, kind of some of the of course the token price has kind of a much higher impact into what we're seeing. For example, I made the decision a few months ago consciously to move the dash cams to Brazil. One of the main reasons for that is that the income of those countries is a bit lower in general. So if you go through that phase of having through that phase before finding that balance, right,
Mhm.
between supply and demand, that kind of it increases the chances of still being able to continue to map, because in the end of the day, if it's not worth for people, they will stop mapping, right? And if they stop mapping, Hivemapper will not be able to kind of achieve their end goal.
Yeah, and the balance you're talking about is the kind of ironic thing in my mind, because everyone's thinking about themselves. It's completely natural. People are self-interested by nature, but everyone's complaining that sort of fewer tokens are being issued. The ironic thing about complaining is that like the more tokens issued, the lower the price goes until we're getting the revenues in, right? And so people are saying, give us tokens, give us tokens. If that happens and we keep emitting or like increase emissions, then the price will just drop as everyone sells those. So yeah, the revenue really is the key figure here. I mean, we're on the topic now, so we might as well dive into it. I did a little bit of analysis the other day. And I mean, to put in perspective, I've got the analytics dashboard up here. I'll put a link in the description if people want to have a look at it themselves. But token burn in dollar terms, it was basically, there was a little bit back in kind of December last year. And then it was like literally zero until April of this year. And it went from sort of 0 to 5K. And then the next week it was like 43K. And then the week after that, it was like 55,000. This is dollars. And then the last week was sort of 45,000. The dashboard's a little bit behind actually. So it's probably more than that in effect.
Yeah.
In honey terms, that is about 540,000 honey. And actually looking at the burn address, the last 7 days, sorry, this is the last thing I'll say on it before we move on. The last 7 days, I've lost it, but it was something like 530,000 honey. So this is a really positive trend. And if it keeps growing, then we're heading the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. And I foresee that because as well of the number of additional mappers, you're getting more and more roads mapped.
Yeah.
Right? So that's going to be better for Hivemapper, but we have to find a balance point somewhere soon. Because for me specifically, and this is a little bit kind of a fleet feedback, is actually the main issue. Of course, the payments are important, right? In the end of the day, the tokens, most people exchange them for dollars or whatever other currency. Is actually the experience of mapping, right? That's something that I found because we have a kind of group chat with all of the drivers, and something that has been difficult. I mean, not that it's always been easy, but it's, like for example, the edge processing on the cameras made it so that it takes a lot more time to transfer the images, and people have to leave the phone open, and then they're busy. And then now we have the mount rating, right? Which in principle, like we talked about this more than a year ago, it is essential to offer good quality.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work, right? If you have the same mount, 1 week it's 4, then 3 days later it's 2, and then it's 3 again, and it shifts all over the place.
Let's talk about the mount rating, because I think that has been one that's been particularly kind of piqued my interest recently. And look, I think in theory, it's a fantastic idea. You do need to submit quality imagery. You should not be rewarded if you don't. The thing that I have a problem with is like, it says 4 out of 4 all week. And then suddenly like the day before payday or on payday, it goes from 4 out of 4 to 2 out of 4. And then again, putting yourself in the fleet management shoes, you then have a team of drivers who are like, dude, what's going on? I've been paid 50% less. It said 4 out of 4 a week. Why is it suddenly 2 out of 4? So I love the idea in theory. I think the implementation has been lacking somewhat.
Yeah.
On the one hand, I think that a lot of these drivers do need to improve their mounts, and it should be either 2 or 3 out of 4. On the other hand, a bit of prior warning, I think, would be good. I was having a discussion on Discord. I can't remember who with earlier. A really helpful guy. So thank you if you're listening to this. My suggestion would be maybe we have a month or 2 of trial where people are seeing their score rating, and you say like maybe there's a message that says you're currently on 2 out of 4 on such and such a date, a month or 2 months in the future. You will be paid 50% less if your rating is still this. Give everyone a little bit of time to sort it out, because amongst the chaos that is the firmware update loops, the poor GPS, the edge processing issues, the bricked dash cams, the list literally goes on. Amongst all of that, if you then start docking people's pay, they get pretty pissed off pretty quickly.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's that is exactly what I'm seeing as well, right? All of those issues combined, like the GPS. So most of my mappers are in actually Sao Paulo, which
Yeah.
you're aware is a very big city with lots of tall buildings. And
Yeah.
most of my mappers are putting the camera outside now because they cannot map with the camera inside. It just, they are not able to get a GPS log, right? And that kind of frustration in terms of, hey, I've driven like 100 kilometers, why am I only have kind of 1,000 images, right?
Yeah.
And then kind of at the end of the week, they say, okay, I've driven 1,000 kilometers for the entire week, but the actual kilometers mapped 150.
Mm-hmm.
And they're like, what the heck is going on, right? I have to wait for the edge processing and then to transfer it. And then in terms of, I've discussed this on Discord a little bit as well, in terms of Brazil, right? So they are kind of they are reworking the regions, right?
Yes.
Especially in Europe, in the US, not too much, but in Brazil, we had São Paulo, which is the big capital. There are like 12 million people just in that one city. They kind of decided to take the entire state as one region, but the entire state bigger than the size of Texas, and is 45 million people. And it's a very big country, right? So it's impossible. And then the MIP, right, to kind of change the kind of progress formula, it becomes impossible to get a good progress where a single region is the size of Texas. You have 45 million people living there. It's so with all of those factors combined, right? Kind of the earnings went to 1/3 because of that. So people in my average earning in Brazil for 50-50 split at this point is like $12 per week.
Yeah.
So that is getting well, actually,
I mean, $50 a month is not terrible.
it's not terrible if it's passive.
Good experience.
Right? If it's passive, exactly. So because people have to wait a lot for the edge processing and the transfer is slow and sometimes it stops, so you have to kind of close the app, open it up again to kind of keep get it going again, and kind of having the transparency. Okay, I kind of drove 1,000 kilometers, but I only mapped 150. Right? Yeah. They find it unfair. So that's the biggest trick. But I moved the cameras from Europe to South America for exactly reason, to kind of not only have a little bit more time in that buffering, right, to kind of for kind of Hivemapper to have time to burn enough tokens and kind of get some demand on the market to actually balance it out. But actually, my drivers in Brazil right now make about 1/3 of my drivers in Europe. Which I think is a bit of a pity, because these are regions in which Google Maps is not very strong. Right? These kind of countries where it's literally gigantic countries, only the center of the cities are mapped. So kind of, for my idea at least, mapping these type of countries would be good for Hivemapper, because it offers a value proposition.
It offers a value proposition that someone else doesn't have. I guess the main question is like, is there a decent amount of demand for that mapping data? I'm not saying there's not. I don't know the answer to that question, but
yeah, well, probably there is not much right now, because Hivemapper is still a small company, and the global footprint might not be that big yet. Being the only one to have like a very good coverage where even Google doesn't have coverage, I think in the long run is going to be beneficial for Hivemapper. All of those kind of things combined, right, is making it challenging.
100%. And I think it is the main factor is the user experience. Obviously, you get the people who are angry about the fact they're getting fewer tokens and the price has gone down. To be quite frank, I don't really care about those people as much, because if you're in it just to get rich quick and you're at the point where you've given up because that's not going to happen, then fair enough. Those kind of people probably aren't going to help the project grow anyway. However, the people who are a bit upset because of the user experience, because of the GPS issues, I totally understand that. And so we've kind of laid out a lot of the problems. I said that we were going to try and dig down on some solutions. So I'm going to ask for your opinion, Meije. I'm going to go through them one by one and see what you think. So let's start with the mapping experience.
Yeah.
Do you think that there are viable solutions to improve the mapping experience, everything from the GPS issues to the kind of slow uploads and firmware update loops, all of that kind of stuff?
Yeah, so my opinion on that is a bit as follows. So we have reached kind of the limit of what the hardware can do, and we've hit that limit quite some time now in terms of what the GPS module is able to handle, what the CM4, so that's the Raspberry Pi compute module that's in there, can handle. Hivemapper wants to do more than that hardware is able to actually deliver. So from my perspective, I think it makes more sense to say, okay, this hardware is not able to meet the standards that we need.
Yeah.
So what we'll do is we'll make sure that we will try to use it in the way that we can, which means if your positioning isn't great, we'll do more AI trainers to kind of match it to the roads, etc. But we'll still keep the level of experience for the user high, which means slacken a bit of the GPS requirements, right? Because they're trying to get something out of that GPS, which that GPS can't offer. And that's why in big cities, I have people driving 300 kilometers per day, but they only map about 2,000 or 3,000 images, right? Because they are not able to get a good GPS log. And the edge processing, the same thing, right? The computer doing there just doesn't have enough power to do proper edge processing. Now, what I would do in this sense is say, okay, we'll just keep it as we had it in kind of the beginning of last year, and we'll just figure out a way to deal with it, and we'll slowly phase those out, which means kind of discounts for like discounts like you do with a phone, right? If you can give them your old phone, you will get $300 of discount to get a new phone, right? Swap those out passively, not in the way that it's happening now. It's basically, yeah, sure. I mean, we need that quality data, so we're gonna squeeze it until we have what we need, and then the end person who suffers there.
I think you've hit the nail on the head in that this hardware just is not sufficient in doing what Hivemapper wants it to do. You can try using a GPS repeater. I've had some situations where it works fantastically, amazing results. I've never got it turning into a jammer, like you've experienced in the past. And then some people, they just say it doesn't really work. And, I've tested, is it because the receiver's too far? No, too close to the repeater. We've tried everything and it just doesn't work that well. Maybe it's a bad repeater. I don't know. Worth trying a few other ones. But anyway, what I'm saying is it doesn't always work. And I think that you said that maybe we could roll back to a previous version of like the GPS strictness, and then somehow they'll figure out a way to make that work. Maybe there literally isn't a way to make that work, and this is why they're being very strict. But we've heard it straight from the horse's mouth, right? We've heard it from Ariel saying the reason why we're pushing everyone towards the B is because it's better hardware, it's going to work better, and it's hopefully going to solve all of these problems. So I think the solution probably is the B, and that's why they're pushing us in that direction. But you raise a good point, which is, what do you do with all these HDCs in the meantime? I don't think trying to wring their neck and squeeze them for all they're worth is the solution, because that's only upsetting people.
Exactly. Yeah. So getting that right is, I think, something that they haven't really managed to do yet. So I think from my perspective, like, for example, we actually pre-ordered the camera, right? 2 years ago, I guess, at this point. It was a quite expensive camera, right? It was $600 as well. Okay, so we've mapped all of these months or years with the camera, and now we're getting to a point where that camera is no longer up to the task. And I asked Ariel many times in the Discord over the last 2 years. He said, "Hey, if a new camera comes, what is the plan? Like, are you gonna increase the rewards for that camera?" And his answer's always been no. The rewards for all the cameras are the same. Well, we've heard that that's no longer going to be happening, right? If it be, you're going to earn more. Now, I think that's a mistake. I think what they should do is, instead of having it earn more, is incentivize people to swap out their camera, right, and get a new one for a discounted price, and really motivate and help the community as well get those cameras out of circulation, because I say that because this Hivemapper that has designed that camera, they discovered that it's not capable of doing what they wanted to do. So in my opinion, it is their responsibility as well to make sure that those people that bought that camera for $600 like us back in the day are able to continue mapping properly with the new camera without having to basically get rid of the camera and then buy the camera again and just get a token swap. It makes much more sense for them to have some strategy to trade in the camera, and then you get a few $100 discount, and then you can get those out of circulation, because we spend a lot of money on those, and that that hardware isn't up to the standard. So
yeah, I mean, look, I don't entirely agree that they're with you when you say that the B shouldn't earn more. I think the B probably should earn more because it's doing more and it's providing more value. But I agree with you in that there should be some sort of, if you have an HDC right now and it's not doing the task they want it to do, then having some sort of incentive in place to swap the HDC with a good one, I think is brilliant. And I don't think a token airdrop when you don't know what the value of that token is going to be at the end of the year, at the beginning of next year, when you get it anyway, you don't know what that's going to be. So like maybe just say, okay, got an HDC, send it back 50% off the price of the B.
On that point, I agree 100%. Actually, I had a discussion with Ariel as well. It's okay, it does make sense, right, over the long term, to have different hardware for different use cases. For example, right, if you live in a country where you don't have a lot of money, you're not going to buy a $600 dashcam, right? Offer them a cheaper one, like the HDC is now, and okay, they will map with that. Do you live in North America and you have more money to invest? Buy a state-of-the-art dashcam, right, with a very good GPS, maybe RTK, whatever it is, and then you'll make a bit more. I 100% agree that specialization within the Hivemapper network should happen.
Yeah.
What I think shouldn't happen is that we have the hardware, the only hardware that we have at our disposal at the time was the HDC, that we do not have a proper way to actually transition at a hardware. Does that make sense? So it's not like I'm saying that the B should earn more. It's like, okay, we want to move to that. Like if I have the option, if I get an upgrade option, right, I will trade in my dash cams. If I get $300 off or $200 off on the B, I will happily trade in all of my HDCs and swap all out. But I'm not going to pay $600 again for a dash cam just 2 years later, right? I mean, most hardware lasts for what, 5 years? So I'm going to swap out. Like we have spent tens of thousands or more on these dash cams. 2 years later, that we already have to buy new hardware. To my opinion, that's a little bit nonsense. And that's what happens with phones as well. If you're going to go from an iPhone 14 to iPhone 15, you your iPhone 14, you'll get $300 off, right, or discount. You will get your new phone, or going with your new.
And I'd be happy for there to be a cutoff on that of, let's say, orders that were put or like delivered this year, fulfilled this year, because yes, we paid $600 like a year and a half ago, but let's be honest, like anyone who was in our situation and didn't sell during that first year has made a good profit on those cameras. It's okay. I think that any cameras that have been delivered this year, maybe that's where you put a cutoff and say these ones you can trade in for a discounted B model.
Yeah, well, I don't disagree with that. However, the tokenomics could have been completely different. And we were lucky in the sense that the token price increased. Some of us not, because some of us didn't sell. So basically, you are not really positively impacted. What I'm saying is, in my opinion, it doesn't make sense. Like, we are not allowed to talk about the token, right? And
this is where we talk about the token.
Yeah, exactly. But then it doesn't make sense to say in there, yeah, but you've made a ton of money. Well, I haven't, because I haven't sold the token. So from my perspective, it doesn't make sense. From my perspective, it makes sense to what is good for the Hivemapper network long term. Yeah. And good for the Hivemapper network is to phase those machines out, keep people happy, right? So solve the current issues with user experience, with GPS, with the regions, which kind of, for some regions, as is my region, went to kind of a 60% drop. in earnings, solve some of those issues, make sure that people are mapping without having to wait for 15 minutes to transfer the data, to wait for the edge processing, and just deal with that hardware and incentivize people as much as possible to trade in the camera. That in the end of the day, we want what is good for the Hivemapper network.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's fair that the mappers have to carry all of the load in terms of being stuck with hardware which isn't up to the task. I think for Hivemapper, they've taken the responsibility to build that hardware, right? They have designed it, they have built it. So I don't think it makes a lot of sense to then say, okay, we'll have a new dash cam. You will earn, right? You will get 2 or 3 or 4,000 tokens bonus. If you have an old camera, then you're not gonna earn as much.
Well, they've identified correctly that everyone needs to switch from the HDC to the B. It's just they've gone about it by throwing tokens at people, which is what we think is the mistake, right? We think that that's where they've gone wrong, and that they could have just done a trade-in, done a discount for anyone who's got their HDC delivered this year. So, I mean, that's something to be considered. We can talk about that more in the future. Don't want to sort of hang on about it too much. But sorry, do you have anything else on that note?
No, it's just that this is not, and it's good to get this right now.
Yeah.
The last time this will happen, right? Over time, hardware is gonna have to be phased out, and new hardware is gonna come in. So it's not like a helium hotspot which just stays up for 5 or 10 years, right? This stuff is gonna be evolving much faster. So it's important to get that right. And just throwing tokens, I don't think is the right way to do it. But
and we still have time as well. They still have time to change the way that they transition as well. It's not too late. We're still at the beginning, and it's very, very natural for any project as ambitious as Hivemapper, moving as quick as Hivemapper, to make mistakes along the way. I'm not sitting here saying, "Oh, naughty Hivemapper." Like, obviously, they're going to make mistakes. Like any project of this size will. It's just, as I said, the goal is, for me at least, to try and come up with some constructive advice rather than sitting here moaning, which I think we've done. I think we've made some suggestions there.
Yeah, well, mainly feedback, right? We're giving feedback from our experience so far as managing a fleet. For example, something we haven't really touched on is kind of having that voltage regulator, which I think
bricked dash cams. My God, this is a little bit of an anecdote, but this is the kind of natural evolution of the drivers I've been onboarding recently, who I've been sending the new batch of dash cams to. I've noticed a higher brick rate in the new kind of like from the 1,000 or 100,000 serial numbers onwards. So it's like you send the dash cam out, they're all happy and ready to go. They get set up, and then all of a sudden you get a call. It's like, hey, I've got the current account can't access dash cam, error message. There's no need for it to be there because they're on the right account. You tell them, okay, swipe up on it, disconnect wallet, reconnect it, restart the app, and they're like, hey, happy to go. And then a day later, you get a call, hey, it wants me to update the firmware, but I can't. I'm stuck in a firmware loop. What do I do? And then delete the app, reinstall it, do this, do that. And then 3 days later, it's going properly. And they call up and it's like, I drove 100 miles today, but I've only got there's dotty. The GPS has obviously been cut out. What's going on there? What do I do? It's like, oh, here you go, have a repeater. And then 3 days later, no lights are coming on. It's dead.
It's dead. Yeah. So all of my dash cams, I've put these 12-volt regulators in between them, and I've had very, very well. Actually, I have none of those that got bricked.
Is that one of? Bear with me 1 second, just for the viewers, anyone watching. I'm going to get one and show.
The Bob Marley.
There he is again. So this is what you're talking about, right? One of if you see it, one of those.
Yeah. Exactly, one of those, and there is a voltage regulator in the middle there.
Yeah,
there are many of them, but I found a good one, which is 1.5 amps, and it's great. Like I've actually had over time, I get many of those that are dying, those kind of voltage regulators, but the camera is fine. So I just swap them out, and they will continue to map, and there's no issue.
We need to let the community know about that, because this has been a massive, massive issue, not only with my fleet, but everybody, right? And I feel a bit silly for not having deployed with these, because it sounds like such a simple solution. And if you were to use one of these, I guess it's the fuse in here that goes rather than the... Yeah.
Burns, but then the camera is fine, right? Because right now with the workload Hivemapper has to kind of get a replacement for the dashcam, it takes a while.
Yeah.
Takes a while. So you kind of protect your dashcam from that. But I also wanted to say, I think something else that would be a huge help, at least for kind of fleets like mine, is to be able to set the language within the Hivemapper app. Because I have people from Brazil says update app, and they don't understand what is written there. So they're like, okay, what do I do, right? And they're gonna stick with that banner up there for the entire week.
Yeah.
It flashes the firmware, and then the images are gone.
And that's a very low effort task, right? You get a translation done in like all the popular languages. You pay some tokens for people to do it, open source it.
Yeah, I mean, we kind of think of that, right? But people that are kind of have to drive for a living because it's their ends meet, right? If they don't work, they don't make any money. Like they don't have time to just sit around and kind of Google. They're driving. My drivers on average drive between 12 to 14 hours per day every single day.
Wow.
So they go out at 5 a.m. and they come back at 8 at night, eat and sleep. So they don't have time to Google Translate all of these things, right? They kind of just expect it to work. And I think it's fair for them to expect it to work because this comes down to the passive mapping experience.
So the original question that got us on this tangent is, how do we fix the user experience? It sounds like the answer is like purely we have to switch to the B and hope that they do a good job at making the B passive.
I think that would be good. However, it's probably going to take a while before people can get their hands on the B. So I think what makes sense for now is for Hivemapper to just cut their losses and just make the experience better, improve it, kind of the update process.
Can they though? Because it's been a year and a half.
I think they can. I think they can. However, probably they can't in the sense that the customers probably they're probably paying for it or doing proof of concepts. So yeah,
I guess we're sitting here saying the most important thing is getting revenue into the system, and keeping the customer happy is the only way that you do that. But at the same time, you don't have a product unless the drivers are driving.
Well, let's put it this way: the edge processing can still be done on Hivemapper side, right? Fair. It can. It's going to be more expensive, but it can. So that's going to solve the transfer part. The updates, right? The update loops. That's just software. That's just making sure that I don't know, cut the updates into chunks because if you have an iPhone, for example, and it's in the background, it won't download, right? So it's up. Make sure that there is a good strategy.
Yeah.
So those are two main points. The GPS is a tough one again, right? Because the GPS is really, if you don't, the customers are probably not going to accept any less. So that's a tricky one. Like I would have wanted, and I know there is some techniques to be able to just record the imagery, record the GPS file, and post-process it to get a little bit better resolution out of it. That's possible. It's not RTK, it's not PPK, it's called something else, but that's possible. You can kind of record the imagery and the GPS separately, and then for some kind of techniques you can improve it. That's costly. It's expensive. I don't know if it works at scale, but that's a little bit more of a stretch. But the other ones should be doable.
Let's just get a partnership between Hivemapper and Geodanet. Everyone with a Hivemapper dashcam gets 50% off a Geodanet station. Set it up in your roof and then tap into it with the dashcam. That's a good one.
We've had some discussions with Ariel and Mike, and there is no willingness from Hivemapper at this point to do any partnership whatsoever. I don't know personally why that is. Maybe it's because they just don't want to rely on RTK. Right?
It might be that the coverage just isn't there. I mean, if it's a global thing, the RTK coverage isn't global.
For Geodanet, it's not the case, but there are bigger networks at this moment. But I don't know what. I think it's that they don't want to be dependent on kind of RTK type systems, and I think Hivemapper or Ariel has been pretty clear that they think they can get the absolute accuracy through photogrammetry and kind of other kind of techniques beyond kind of absolute positioning. which I still have my doubts if that's possible at scale, but we'll see, right? I mean,
that's
it's always evolving, so.
Outside the realms of my knowledge, it sounds like there was like L1 and L5 GPS chips in the B will be an improvement. But again, that's a whole nother rabbit hole we get into. I'm going to move on to a separate topic, which is, okay, quick question for you. So I guess to premise it, the data that Hivemapper is collecting is, in my opinion, super valuable. A lot of companies would want it, and no one else really has it, at least at this level of freshness. It's pretty awesome. 100x in revenues, is it possible, and what is the time frame?
100x in revenue from today is definitely possible.
Mm-hmm.
What I am questioning is, and we already have the answer to that question to a certain degree, is what is the type of data and the quality of that data that those customers want, right? So I think the push towards going towards the B is actually a byproduct of customer feedback.
100%. 100%.
100x is possible, definitely. Right? My question is mainly, okay, well, probably not with the HDC.
No.
Not.
Well, that's come, I think,
yeah.
I'm not mistaken. I don't think I'm mistaken when I say that has come straight out of Ariel's mouth. That, look, this is the reason why we're pushing for the B, because customers want it to be of this kind of quality, and the HDC can't handle that, so we need to go to the B. I think that's a fact by now.
So 100x times the revenue that they have today is easy, right? I mean, if you have a network that big, and a number of mappers have come on board is increasing every single day, right? I'm not even sure how many mappers we are at this point, but tens of thousands.
Yeah.
At some point, you get towards a kind of inflection point, towards the scale that you have, in which the progress is so high in these regions that there is no one that can compete in terms of freshness.
Yeah.
And that's something that I think we're going to see more towards the end of this year and to kind of the start of next year.
Mm-hmm.
Is Hivemapper in certain places is going to have such a big scale and such freshness, and especially, I mean, we haven't even talked about the buzz, right? Kind of sending different reports.
Yeah.
That no one that's going to be able to compete with them. The question is the freshness alone enough of a value proposition, or does it have to be tied to some quality in terms of imagery?
Yeah,
that's more tricky to kind of achieve, because because if a company wants centimeter level accuracy, it's going to be very difficult with the current dashcam and with the B probably as well.
Mm.
Unless all of these other techniques that work. So if it's a multi-billion dollar industry every single year. So 100x revenue is more than doable.
And that's the customer side, right? To get the 100x in revenues, you obviously still need a product there. And I think that in order to get the products, aka people still willing to drive, you need to get the mapping experience incredibly passive. I think the bullish thing about the B is that it's just one device. At the moment, you've got to contend with the app on Android, on iPhone. That's been causing a lot of slow progress in terms of getting the user experience good. If it's all just done on the device itself, that's just one device and operating system, I guess, that they need to actually design the firmware for. The reason why I asked 100x yes or no is because, just doing a little bit of very quick maths the other day, revenues or token burn would have to 100x from where they are today to balance out with tokens minted to the community. So if you take the team out of it, investors out of it, just the community emissions, 100x revenues would balance that. And then let's pretend no one else is selling anything. More revenue comes in then, token price, simple, it goes up, simple, supply demand. So I think there's definitely a bullish take there, which is cool to see.
Yeah, and reaching that point, that's going to be critical.
Yeah.
And
Soon,
yeah, because if the token price keeps dropping, and we've seen it with helium, if the token dropping, the number of mappers isn't going to continue to go up.
No.
So you have back orders to fill, It's the same as happened with helium, but these devices are going to go offline. People are going to start and it's going to go down. And I don't think now is a good time for it to go down. And we haven't noticed that really yet, but that's because it's still young, right? I mean, that kind of cycle with helium took a year, or more than a year for kind of it to go down. So we have to be careful with that. So it's possible. It should, and I think that's one of the main, and I'm sure that kind of Hivemapper has that as one of the biggest priority, is to make sure that happens as soon as possible, to make sure that we don't get into a point where they don't have that very good product market fit and able to sell. And the token is down, so there are less mappers, so you have less of a product to sell to your customers, right? That's the problem. If you sell the freshness, you might as well have the freshness to be able to sell, right?
But I think that I can see a bright future where the B comes online and is a brilliant bit of kit that is completely passive, and then the clients follow. But it is critical that we get there relatively soon, I think.
If the B does indeed have a lot more of the edge processing, and there is a lot less waiting for image transfers, and there is frankly less data to transfer in the first place, that would be a massive help. The SIM card is good, although in my opinion, the SIM card, we've seen that with helium as well, is okay. Yeah, the SIM card is great because then you can deploy in off-grid sites. Okay, but if your revenue per dashcam drops below what you pay for the SIM card, which has happened with my helium fleet back in the day, you were paying thousands of dollars per month for miners that don't, to cover the cost. So that's a good value add for fleets, right? For kind of professional fleets. I still doubt at this point that we are able to actually onboard large scale professional fleets.
Not people, basically businessmen with a fleet of vehicles.
Yeah, because I still doubt that's gonna work. With a SIM card, it might work, but as you know, there is more to managing a dashcam, right? You need to clean the lens every once in a while. You clean the window. You need to kind of make sure your mount is well. And that's another point. Feedback time. We are still waiting for a Hivemapper endorsed external mount. Like many of us that have GPS issues are okay with installing the dashcam outside of our car. Many of my fleet mapper members do it. But we need a proper external enclosure to be able to. I know there are some 3D printed versions out there, but it's about time to get a proper external dashcam enclosure that also is able to handle rain.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not 100% sure that's going to work in the UK. Maybe it will work, and maybe my drivers, the keen ones at least, would. I think it's a tough sell to at least like a new driver. Hey, you're going to have to put the wire through the roof and then like keep it up there and hope it doesn't get stolen in the middle of a big city where there's a lot of crime.
So actually, what we do is we tie it with a steel cable to the front hood of the car. We actually tie the mount with a steel cable. And it's right in the middle so that it's hard to kind of reach. So most of the longer term mappers that we have actually are open to install it. But if they have to get out of the car every time it starts raining, and in the UK it's impossible for that reasons. But like for example, Southern Europe, Brazil, right, you have more sun. It works. You get great quality imagery. What you need. So now we have people kind of DIYing silicon cases and kind of plexiglass stuff, but it's like come on, man. I mean, Hivemapper has sold tens of thousands. I mean, how much does it cost to actually manufacture one of these cases? It's some R&D cost, but it's not too much, right? And then you at least give us an option to kind of work around the GPS issue, because
and you get better image quality, which is what the client wants.
The best ways we have. So we are trying proactively to work around those kind of tightening of the GPS kind of requirements by installing it outdoors. But if you don't have an exterior mount, it's very tough, right, to be constantly taking it out of the roof, and then you have to wait, and then you have to put it back up. So
Well, look, I think we could probably leave it there. I think that's we've covered a lot, and we've gone through the kind of general sentiment, some things to be bullish about, some offers, advice for improvement. So I think we've probably got where we need to be. No, final remarks from my side would be, if anyone's got their camera, they're having user experience issues, they're feeling a little bit frustrated. My advice would be, look, just stick with it. I have all the faith in the Hivemapper team that they will kind of sort out this experience. I think that in the long run, it's an awesome long-term project that's very much worth being a part of. And yeah, stick to it is what I say.
Yeah, and from my side as well, I've learned that it doesn't work to convince people to stay mappers, right? So you either have people that are in it for the long term, or it's not sustainable. So that's a bit of my kind of takeaway, and also for kind of people thinking of kind of starting their fleet. Okay, if you have that initial chat, you can say, here you have a mapper, you can make some tokens, etc. But if you see that they're not mapping properly, or they're not responding, or etc., it's not worth it to convince people. Either people see the value in the project, or they don't. And if they don't, it's much better just take out the dashcam and install it somewhere else.
100%. And I've got guys who, you probably got the same, who were with us like a year ago. We were having the same conversation. I've got guys saying like, hey, dude, I'm earning like $20 a month. I don't know whether this is worth it. Some of them stuck with it. Some of them didn't. When the token price went up and a lot of them cashed out, they were happy. They stuck at it for 9 months without earning very much. And I'm not saying that that's 100% going to happen again, but that's what that's the future that I want for Hivemapper. That's where I think it's going to go. And let's keep an eye on those revenues, because I think that is the key metric.
That is the key metric, 100%. All right. Great chat.
I'll see you next time. Cheers, Maya.
All right. Cheers.